Good afternoon. First of all, I want to wish everyone a happy Women's History Month. I'm Dr. Arlene Hope-Scala, Chair of Women's and Gender Studies. I also want to thank Donna Scaleri for putting together this wonderful panel, Fighting for Women's Rights, Aren't They Human Rights? And I think that focusing on women's rights as human rights is just so very important. Secondly, as some of you know, Women's and Gender Studies adjunct faculty member Gloria Thompson died suddenly last Saturday. She also worked as a counselor in the past. Gloria taught women's changing roles with us for 3 years. She was known for being very kind and friendly, and she was well liked by both students and her colleagues. So please join me in a moment of silence for Gloria Thompson. Thank you.
Today we are proudly hosting a consortium panel of religious leaders representing their communities to discuss domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and lesbian, gay, bi, transgender, LGBT issues. The discussion will focus on matters each member finds imperative, share their approaches, and hopefully return with concepts to their own organizations. There are 2 reasons to bring these leaders together. The first is recently I had the opportunity to work on a legislative bill for stiffening the laws against Johns, or those who patronize or use the prostitutes. But by the time the legislative bill passes and the fines are collected and something can be done to help these victims, too much time is going by. But faith-based organizations have the resources and the passion to make a difference today, to go out there and together with legislators, they can make a difference in a much quicker fashion. Secondly, during the civil rights movement, when the religious leaders came together with their drive, they were able to make a difference. We saw that through the 1960s. And we can make a difference in these crimes against women and humanity overall. So I just want to share a really few quick facts, because domestic violence from the American Medical Association, 1 out of 4 women will be abused by an intimate partner during their lifetime, which is 12 million women in the United States. Sexual assault, the National Crime Victimization Survey states 600 women are raped or sexually assaulted every day. Human trafficking, it's in all our communities. Laborers, from our salon, where we're getting our nails done, to farm workers, to our local restaurants, the sex slaves. The average age of a prostitute is 13 years old. UNICEF reports 2.44 million people are human trafficked in the world. Half of them are minors. In today's currency, the value of a 19th century slave would be worth $30,000 to $40,000. Well, today, a human trafficking victim is worth $90. That's how disposable and that's how lowly we value human life. For the LGBT community, the right to live, LGBT communities found 2 out of 3 students are not safe in their schools and are 3 times more likely to attempt suicide. 25% of them are disowned when they go home to their families and come out. So, as they say, or as Benjamin Franklin said, justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. So, Tony Porter from A Call to Men states, from his Call to Men Foundation, there are this many men in the world, there are this many that are abusive. So, if we add even further that this many people in this world and this many men and women are somehow abusing somebody's human rights, it is up to the rest of us to make the difference, to re-educate them and to teach them. And that's what we plan on, coming up with ideas today that we can all share. We can bring them back to our communities, back to our faith-based organizations, and practice this amongst ourselves. So each member will be asked a question and have 2 to 3 minutes to respond, and they may respond to each other. No cards are being distributed. You can jot down questions, raise your card, they'll be collected, and we'll address them. And after we're all through, we will do a question and answer series. Right now, I'm going to turn this over to Kelly Carpone, who is a sophomore here at William Patterson and founded William Patterson Students Against Violence. And just quickly sitting with her is former Chief Prosecutor Kevin Ronco from Passaic County.
Hi, everyone. I'm a sophomore here, Women and Gender Studies student at William Patterson. Recently, this semester is our first semester up and running. The aim of our organization is to spread awareness and prevention for domestic violence, sexual violence, and stalking. I feel that the importance of having a student-run organization is to have student voices. We're the future, young students, and to speak out and say that violence is unacceptable is absolutely vital to our community and to our future. So I'm briefly going to begin by having each of the panelists briefly introduce yourselves and your faith-based organizations. I'm going to start with Pastor Thomas.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you today. My name is Thomas Kyneth. I'm the lead pastor at Calvary Temple here in Wayne. It's a vibrant, growing, very intercultural community, faith community.
Thank you. Carolyn Somerville.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Carolyn Somerville. I'm an associate professor of political science at Hunter College, but I'm also a member of Nichiren Shoshu Buddhism and the Soka Gakkai International, a lay Buddhist organization.
Dr. Quintana.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you. This is the Imam of the Islamic Center of Passaic County, Dr. Muhammad Qatanani. Also, I am the Tri-State Imams Council Chairman in New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa Brown.
Hi, I'm Melissa Brown. I'm a senior marketing major and studio art minor at William Patterson. I'm treasurer of Hillel, the Foundation for Jewish Campus Life, and a lifetime member of Hadassah.
Thank you. Max Sainville.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Max Sainville, and I'm a math and education major here at William Patterson University, and I'm representing WPU InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. Thank you.
Rabbi Mark.
My name is Randy Mark. I'm the rabbi of Shomrei Torah, the Wayne Conservative Congregation. It's a small liberal congregation here in Wayne, just down the hill. I'm also the president of the North Jersey Board of Rabbis, past president of the Wayne Clergy Fellowship, and past president of the New Jersey Rabbinical Association, the Association of Conservative Rabbis here in the state.
Professor Sandra Ramos.
My name is Sandra Ramos. I'm the founder of the first shelter for battered women and children in the home that I shared with my 3 children in 1970. That'd probably be a run-on sentence, but that's what I did. And I believe in the goddess, the power of women's energy, and I feel that many miracles happen. I'll talk about some afterwards every day, and that if we are not held down and able to be in touch with our power, we can make the kind of world that we're all trying to do right here. So thank you, and I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. And lastly, Professor Sue Bedell.
Right. Hi, my name is Sue Bedell, and I teach at William Patterson in the Dr. Scala's Women in Studies and Gender Department. My first career was in video production in New York. I was born and raised a Catholic, and when the Catholic Church refused, after the law was passed in New Jersey and other states, to recognize same-sex marriages, and in New Jersey, civil unions, to refuse to allow same-sex partners to have their legal services in their own congregations, I decided that I would become a minister in the Universal Life Church, which is an internet missionary. And so that's what I did in 2009. And since then, I've found it very rewarding to, and most of the people that I deal with have been heterosexuals, because my partner of 24 years was diagnosed with cancer in 2010, and so I spent a lot of time in hospitals, and it's just been very rewarding. And but I can also tell you that I've found a lot of Catholic priests and brothers who are totally fine with the LGBT community, and not everybody at all in the Catholic Church embraces the view that God makes mistakes when he makes gay people. So.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to briefly ask the panel if you could kindly explain what issues are most imperative to you in regards to the main 4 issues that we're discussing today, and what do you want to share with the group? Pastor Thomas?
Thank you. I want to speak this afternoon concerning human trafficking. Just over the last year, I have come to an awareness of just how broad the scope of this problem really is. Slavery is not a thing of the past. The consistent figures today are that there are 27 million people in the world who are trafficked. They are part of sex trafficking or labor trafficking in the world. UNICEF, as Dr. Scolari had mentioned earlier, finds that 1 million new children every year are added to human trafficking. That means that every 26 seconds, another child in the world is brought into human trafficking. There are approximately 800,000 to 900,000 victims of human trafficking who are brought across international borders. I'm just speaking worldwide at this point, and at this point in the world, human trafficking now surpasses drug trafficking and illegal arms trade in gross receipts. Highest grossing criminal industry in the world today is human trafficking. Speaking of the United States, the U.S. is now the second highest destination for trafficked victims in the world. Sex trafficking is happening now in all 50 states. It is estimated that between 18 and 20,000, although some experts will say as high as 60,000 trafficking victims are brought into the United States from international borders. 14,000 of them are coming through JFK International Airport every year. 14,000 victims are brought across international boundaries into the United States. Let me speak of children, though, and women as well, because of the 27 million people who are trafficked in the world today, 80% are women, 50% are children, 17 and under. It is held by the U.S. government today that there are as many as 300,000 children right at this moment who are being trafficked in the United States. And the average age of entry into pornography or into prostitution today, the average age is 13. The average age of the first sale for sex in the United States today is between 11 and 14. The government has found that there are about 2.8 million children who are on the streets. They're not living within their own homes, not living within a safe home, whether a guardian or a parent. And out of the 2.8 million children in the United States, added to that number are about 2,300 children who are missing every day. Most of them would be runaways. But out of the 2,300 that are missing every single day, the government estimates that 2/3 will be approached within 72 hours by a trafficker. And 1/3 of that total amount, over 750 more children every single day, accounting now for over 300,000 children in the United States are being trafficked every year. 750 new children every single day. Just very quickly, what is being done about this in the United States? To the best of my research, and again, since May of last year, this need has come to my attention. We're working with various organizations, but I've come to find that there are only 5 resident programs in the entire United States for domestic trafficking victims who are minors. Only 5. Approximately 80 beds are available in all of the United States today. It's only about 1% of victims in the United States who are being rescued at this point. To put it in perspective, there are about 17,000 homicides in the United States every year. 60,000 law enforcement agents are specifically trained to work with homicide. And yet you can count the number of law enforcement agents who are specifically trained to work with human trafficking. They are 5 at the most in the entire United States. Only 5 at the most compared to 60,000 dealing with homicides.
Thank
Just
you, Pastor Thomas.
thank you.
Okay, Carolyn Somerville.
Hi, brief introduction of Nichiren Buddhism. It was begun by Nichiren Daishonin, a 13th century Japanese monk who believed everyone without exception is worthy of their human dignity and worthy of respect. So he had equal respect for men as well as women. Having said that, our practice is to encourage people to engage in their inner transformation, to raise their highest potential, to bring out their highest level of compassion, courage, wisdom, to confront the challenges that life presents. And between birth and death, all of us go through various sufferings, and some go through incredible sufferings, as Pastor Thomas just mentioned. So in our organization, we're in 192 countries and territories around the world, over 12 million people. Essentially, our practice is chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo to bring out our highest potential, as I said, our highest level of courage, compassion, wisdom, and life force. So we have members who have come to us, who join us, having experienced domestic violence, having experienced sexual assault, even a young woman who was engaged, was trafficked at one point. And of course, we welcome everyone, so we have a very important contingent of gays and lesbians in our organization. So we work with everyone and really encourage everyone who is suffering through these 4 kinds of sufferings to really see themselves as worthy of respect, to reject all violence against themselves, to be neither victim nor victimizer. And so we have meetings. We just finished a big meeting for women in which women talked about their victories, overcoming their sufferings. We also have conferences at our Florida Nature and Culture Center in Fort Lauderdale. We've got one coming up in April for gays and lesbians, in which gays and lesbians who are Buddhists can talk about their lives and encourage each other. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Katani?
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank you very much for this event, which is very important, especially for our community as Middle Eastern and Muslim community and Arab community. A few years ago, as an imam, I faced many issues of the family and domestic violence, and since maybe now 12 years ago or more, I thought that it is very important to establish an organization and foundation to protect the women's rights and to prevent the domestic violence. And we established one of the very, very important organizations, Wafa House. Wafa House now is well known in the area for Muslims and non-Muslims as well. I believe as an imam that we have to differentiate between culture and religion. Unfortunately, that when we see some men or sometimes some women misuse the understanding of the verses of the Quran or the tradition of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So we stood up, we end the silence regard of this issue. We made many workshops about the rights of women in Islam, the rights of the wife in Islam, and what did Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the Quran say about how to treat our wives, our sons and daughters. thanks to God that after a few years we found that big change had happened in the community. Now, most of people, they are educated about the rights of their wives and the issues of domestic violence, especially for me now, it is very, very rare issue. So I think it is very important to educate people first. Education is number one in solving the rights of women, the rights of the wives, the rights of children. I think education. And we are here in this great place of education. I think through our students, we can make the change. Thank you.
Thank you. Melissa?
I'd have to say the most imperative issue for me would be prevention and education, knowing the red flags, knowing your rights, knowing what laws protect you, not only government and national, but also what your religion says. And just especially as a young college woman, to know the signs of a domestic violence relationship and for others to know too.
Thank you. Next?
Yes, the most imperative issue to me is human trafficking. So that's what I'm going to be speaking about today. Specifically what human trafficking is, how does human trafficking affect us, and what we can and what we should do about it. So that's what I'll be speaking about today.
The Jewish community is not at all a monolithic community, but far and away the topic that has dominated here in northern New Jersey has been the rights of the LGBT Jewish community. This last fall, for the first time, two men in a relationship submitted an announcement to the Jewish paper of their upcoming marriage, and the Jewish paper ran it and received a unbelievably negative response from the Orthodox Jewish community, which led them a week later to print a retraction and an apology for offending them, which led to an even more overwhelming negative reaction from the liberal Jewish community. And since that time, I've been at the forefront of trying to bring the Jewish community together to discuss these events and to try and figure out how we can function as one open, accepting Jewish community.
Thank you.
I think that we need to look at the sacred hoop where everything is connected. And what I'm hearing thus far from everyone is very inspiring, and it seems quite simple. If everybody would just follow the true precepts of what they believe, then we would have a very wonderful society. We live right now in a patriarchal society where violence is almost the norm, where it is so prevalent. And we talk about it more. In 1970, when I opened my home, nobody talked about it. Now people talk about it. But as with human trafficking, it only exists because there's a market for it. If there were no market for it, it wouldn't exist. And so what as I said, the sacred hoop, I was born Jewish, and I'm sitting next to the rabbi, and I have a tambourine that my children gave me because I couldn't be with them on Mother's Day because I was picketing for custody of children be not taken away from their protective mothers. And this tambourine has inspired me. And I had converted to Catholicism in one of my paths and was Catholic for many years. And now what I follow and believe in is the goddess, Wiccan, women's power. And I think that it's one of the fastest growing religions from what I understand, and that if everybody would consider the values, men, women, and children, the values that we have in our society right now of greed and control and power and domination, and would work to have a free society where everybody could follow their spirit. I think one of the reasons that I have been able to accomplish many of the things that I have done, opening the first shelter and then, having that one get bureaucratized and starting another one and having that grow, and the many women and children that have come through it, the reason that I believe that I've been able to do it is because what I believe in is something that is empowering, that encourages me to be who I am and to follow what is right and what is good and what is healing and what is powerful. So if everybody would just follow what their religion teaches, I think it would be really beautiful. Blessed be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Bedell?
Yes, my name is Sue Bedell, and my main topic will be speaking about the LGBT community. And to tell you the truth, I think that organized religion is one of the main reasons why the LGBT community is held in such low esteem and fear. I think the people at this table are rare exceptions and are fighting for it. And Rabbi, you know what happens when you try to help the LGBT community. And I was sitting last night reading my Bible, and my undergraduate degree was in economics and with a minor in theology, and being a Catholic, we get to study both the Bible, the Old and the New Testaments. And yeah, all these papers in front of me are from a colloquial that I gave on America's losing its place in the world as a leader in civil rights because of the treatment of its LGBT individuals. And it's true. Some of its standings, the ratings for human rights hold us as low as 97th. I mean, South Africa, the great old home of apartheid, recognizes same-sex marriage because they know what it's like to be treated as a second-class citizen. What happened to Tyler Clemente in Rutgers University, because his quote friends or whatever classmates taped him in an intimate sexual act with his partner and drove him to jump off, the bridge, was not an isolated act of, LGBT youth being driven to suicide. There was Sex Welch, who was a sixth grader, and there's a whole list of people, young youths, that were driven to the same thing. And I call these incidents, I don't call them suicides, I call them serial murders on the part of our homophobic society. And I think that organized religion is the main people who are perpetuating the thought in these kids' minds and their next door roommates in their university's minds that they're sick and that the thing that they, the way that they feel is sick. And I'm gay and I know that that's what happened, and I don't think it's getting better. And I want to talk about, when my time is up, I want to talk about the recent change to DOMA, which President Clinton instituted as an executive order in 1996. He did it for political reasons because then the Republican Congress and Senate, they were both ruled by Republicans, were about to pass an amendment to the Constitution saying that same-sex marriage would be banned. So we actually saved our butts by passing this executive order. And now President Obama is saying he will not enforce it, and he will not have the Justice Department enforce it. But that's not the same as rescinding it. All right.
We'd now like to introduce Ken Rocco, the former Chief Assistant Prosecutor of Passaic County.
Thank you, Kelly. Good afternoon, everybody. I am actually an adjunct professor here at William Patterson. I see some of my students in the fall and spring classes here. It's good to see the students here. I have a special interest in two areas. One is domestic violence, and within domestic violence, the role of religion, And let me stop myself for a second. I see a number of men here, young males. All the men, would you please stand up? All the men, stand up. Awesome, sit down. Just real brief, I retired as a prosecutor 3 years ago, and the last 7 years of which I created and became chief of a domestic violence unit. Prior to that, there was no domestic violence unit, and a case where a man would beat his wife would be listed with a burglary or a car case. There was no special attention given to it. Well, we've changed that completely, and right now Passaic County has the best approach regarding domestic violence in the state and maybe even in the country. But one thing I found out when I started doing domestic violence work is that you just have to do more than prosecute the criminals. You had to reach out to the community and see what was out there to help the victims, because these victims were isolated, they were standing by themselves. Prosecution alone was not going to break the cycle. So I had the pleasure of meeting many people who are here today. I met with Sandy Ramos, who fought the fight when nobody was fighting it, when there were hundreds of shelters for dogs, but no shelters for women. She took him into her home. And I like her hair and the way she dresses, and I don't care. She's Sandy, and Sandy fought the fight. And she's still fighting the fight. I met the Imam, the good Imam Katanani from the mosque in Patterson, because I found out that there was this Imam that was standing tall on the issue of domestic violence and lecturing against it and fighting it. And he's here today in an academic setting, but I can tell you there's times 3 o'clock in the morning when he gets out of his house and he takes care of a woman whose face has been battered, and he gathers the support, and he makes sure that she's safe and her children are safe. And he's probably been criticized for that, but he stands tall too. Every town in Passaic County is close to having a domestic violence response team. We have a number of ladies from the Hawthorne Domestic Violence Response Team, so I got to meet them. Because part of what you do is not prosecute, you have civilians, trained civilians such as them, right there at the police headquarters when the victim is being processed and the defendant is being arrested. We have the Passaic County Women's Center here. I got to work with them. They help organize the divert teams throughout the county. One thing I did find, though, that frankly there was an absence of religious voices in this issue. Now it's changing now, I'm starting to see for the first time. But I had a discussion with Professor Scolari, and we both came to the conclusion that for real progress to be made, because the rates of domestic violence are not going down, society is responding much better after the violence has occurred, but why is there no change in the results and the amount of crime that's happening? And I'm coming to the conclusion that, one, we need more involvement from the religious side of society, and number two, the men have to stand up. And that's why I had the men stand up 5 minutes ago. Because men have to grab this issue. We've caused it, and we got to be part of the solution. So I think that's where society has to go. Now myself, I have one question I'm going to sit down for every member of the clergy, because I found out that my victims oftentimes would tell me that they would seek solace with their clergy, and most of the time the clergy, from what they would tell me, was being told to them by the clergy, didn't understand the issue. And unfortunately, more than a few times, the clergy would refer to their holy book, whatever it might be, and they would say, well, we have to keep the family together, you have to forgive, and advise the victim to go back. Now what's happened, the victim is then going back to a crime scene where the criminal's now been empowered because his clergy member has said she's to come home and forgive. Now that's changing, but I think it's still out there. So my question to each member of the clergy is, number one, the young clergy that are being trained in your particular faith, what are they being taught in their seminary or whatever term is used as regards to domestic violence? And then number two, the clergy that are here, that are in place, the older clergy, is there any in-service training on domestic violence? So my question again is domestic violence training both for the new clergy and the clergy that are older. Maybe we can start at the far end, I suppose.
Thank you. Certainly there's a great concern. My fellowship is the Assemblies of God, and there is a great concern in all of these issues that we've addressed already, and specifically concerning domestic abuse situations. I have personally brought the police into situations to rescue wives who are battered, to take them out of situations. We have quite a few universities and colleges, and I'm sure that on various campuses and various classes, there is training, there is awareness. I would say, generally speaking, we would approach this, whether it be human trafficking or abuse situations, this way. I believe that the Bible, the Word of God, which has already been referenced and which many of us draw from, very clearly states that every human being is created in the image of God. I see the essential equal worth of every human being, regardless of how they might identify themselves in the sight of God. The Bible makes it very clear that there is no more male nor female, bond or free, Jew or Gentile, and there is equality in that. And so we would approach it that way, even in educating pastors and ministers and so on, that there are equal rights.
We're a lay organization, so we don't have any formal training. It's really encouraging all of our members to become leaders in our lay organization. But on the issue of domestic violence, first of all, we would encourage a woman to awaken to the greatness of her life, that her life is worthy of respect. And I think the Buddhist angle on these types of issues is we would say to women, it's your choice. Chant, gain the wisdom to know what to do. You have to do what's best for you and your children. But we would also say to her, by the same token, you have to change something inside. Because if not, you're going to find yourself perhaps in the same situation. So we talk about inner human reformation, to change what she may believe about herself that puts herself in a situation of such violence.
As I mentioned before, that misunderstanding is the main issue of domestic violence. If you go back to the Quran, you will find many verses talking about to be nice and kind and merciful to your spouse. It is an obligation, not an optional issue. And there is too many ayahs. Let me read some of these ayahs of God. God said, and this is one of the most comprehensive verse on the kindness in the Quran, in the word of Allah, that says, worship Allah and join none with him in worship. Do good to parents, kinsfolks, orphans, the poor neighbor who is near of kin, the neighbor who is a stranger, your wife, and so on. Another verse talking about that domestic violence or any violence is unacceptable. There is one of the tradition of the Prophet. He said, Allah is forbearer and He loves forbearance and rewards forbearance, while He does not reward severity and does not give for anything besides it. So the severity or the violence is unacceptable in the teachings of God and the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I wrote a book about the happy marriage in Islam, and I wrote in that book about the rights of the wife, and she has to be treated well and to be treated fairly and justly. And according to the Quran, men and women are created from one soul and from one father, Adam, and the same mother, Eve. And one of the, maybe the last saying of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ when he died is, take care of your women, take care of your wives. And the worst sin is to be bad with your wife. To repress anger and who pardon men, verily Allah loves al-muhsinin, the good doers. So one of the most important character or characters in Islam is to repress anger. There is show forgiveness, enjoying what is good, and turn away from the foolish. There is a hadith for the Prophet which is in the subject itself. That hadith is many women have gone around Muhammad's family complaining of their husbands. At the time of the Prophet, some women came to the Prophet's family and they complaining about their husbands. He said, those who do so, that is those who take to beating their wives, are not the best among you. And he forbade to beat the woman. And also, one of the most beautiful ayahs, which is used always when we invite people for the party of wedding. Always you will find this ayah, and Allah has made for you mates and companions of your own nature, and made for you out of them sons and daughters and grandchildren, and provided for you sustenance of the best. Will they then believe in vain things and be ungrateful to Allah forever? There is another saying, and women shall have rights similar to the rights against them, according to what is equitable. So the rights of men and women in Islam are equal. There is no difference in the rights between them. Unfortunately, the understanding of some other verses or some other hadiths, and used also, we call it in Arabic تعسف في استعمال الحق. It means that you use your right in violent way, and it is unacceptable. Again, the hadith of the Prophet, the best among you those who are the best for their wives. And this is what we want to teach people, especially those who are ignorant in the religion. Thank you.
"25 years ago, when I was in rabbinical school, in the non-Orthodox world, there was already a transition taking place from rabbinic training being academic and text-based to also being professional training for the clergy. And so we had training in the role of clergy as pastoral counselor. And today, it has progressed even farther, where they will deal with specific issues like domestic violence. For those of us already out in the field, we do training for rabbis. One of the organizations that is working in this area is called Project Sarah. And Sarah, besides being a matriarch within our tradition, is also an acronym for Stop Abusive Relationships at Home. And it's training by those with expertise in domestic violence in the Jewish community for the rabbinic community on how do you identify domestic violence, how do you counsel women in terms of legal matters and safety and security, and making sure that they are protecting themselves and their families. One of the things that came out of this community conflict that I've been involved in was a desire to have the Orthodox and the non-Orthodox rabbis begin to interact with each other, because we run in completely different circles. And the first project that we came up with is that we are doing, later this month, domestic violence training for rabbis, where the Orthodox rabbis and the non-Orthodox rabbis will sit together with representatives from Project Sarah and from Jewish Family Service, so that we can get training in this important area, and we can also break down some of the barriers that exist.
One of the basic premises of the Wiccan goddess religion is honoring women. And the way women are treated in society is indicative of the type of society we have. Right now, I don't think, despite all the wonderful work everyone here is doing, despite that, we can't deny that every day you read or hear about somebody killed in domestic violence. We know the statistics of human trafficking. We know that throughout the world there are still clitoridectomies, suti, Arab honor killing, all those horrible things that are misogynist. And the society we live in is a woman-hating society. And there are a lot of good men that are fighting against that, and of course, women. But I think that it's really important to teach that women is the creator, and a lot of people, many people, see the higher power in a form of he. I see it as she. When I travel through different countries, like in Italy, you see the Blessed Virgin in the place where the God is. That is the creator. In the farms, they see the creator is female, is woman. So if you have a society where there is no misogyny, where there is a love of women, where women are taught to love themselves, to feel good about themselves, not taught you have to get married and you have to have someone, and if you don't have anyone, you're unvalidated. We at the shelter, many of the women are looking for another husband or baby daddy or something, but we teach them to love themselves first, and that in order to have a healthy relationship, whether it be lesbian or heterosexual or whatever it may be, that you have to love yourself. And if you see yourself in the reflection of the higher power as the goddess, you will honor yourself, and you won't allow anyone to call you any name other than the one on your birth certificate or the one that you choose to have. So I think that we need to get on the bandwagon. Some people, I'm one of them, believes that in 212 the world isn't ending, but the patriarchy is ending. And so all good people, people of goodwill, need to go along with that and work not to feel threatened, because in my opinion, good men don't have to be threatened by strong, powerful women. Good men who know who they are have to honor women. So I think we need to all work together to create a society where there is sharing and loving and caring, and I view that as a matri-magic society. Thank you.
Thank you. In the Universal Life Church, even though people may write it off because it's an online, you get ordained online after you fill out some questions, there are ongoing, it's an online courses or information that's offered, and we actually have online discussions and a lot of disagreements about different topics. So it's not like when you register your car or something like that and you pay whatever it is to register a car nowadays, and that's the end of it. And I can tell you about LGBT issues, not everybody agrees, because there are a lot of people who are part of the ministry and some of them disagree with the LGBT freedoms. So there are a lot of online workshops and discussions to try to bring some of those people into the light. I'm not at all surprised that the Catholic priests didn't show up here. And when I said before that that there are some Catholic priests that I've found who are in favor of LGBT people and allow us to go to their churches and everything. When I lived in Newark, one of my really good friends was a Catholic priest, and we went there all the time. My partner and I was the AIDS minister for the church there. But when it came to performing, a civil union there, he said no. I said, we don't have to do it in the church. He said, no matter what, someone would find out and I'd be in trouble. Now, this is a guy who we give money to all the time, who, I had been in this parish for 15 years, who I pretty much believe was gay himself, and yet, he wasn't going to do a civil union ceremony in our house where no one would know about it. So that's when I decided to become, a universal life minister myself. And I have a couple of questions too.
I just want to hit a few more points, and then we'll get to a discussion among everybody.
Well, can I just say something about the training? Because I, as a Eucharistic minister in the Catholic Church, they asked me to do that because they didn't have someone who would be the Eucharistic minister at the hospital there, St. Michael's Hospital, in the AIDS unit. Now, these weren't people who got AIDS from being gay. These were people who got AIDS from being intravenous drug users. And none of the deacon and none of the other Eucharistic ministers would go there and give them communion. So I said I would do it, but I wasn't going to lie about being gay. And so my priest said, fine, don't worry about it. So there's one little chunk of hypocrisy. And then when I went there, there was this deacon who was going around. He was supposed to teach me how to be a Eucharistic minister. And he's going around asking the married women if they were divorced. And if they were divorced, he wouldn't give them communion. So I went back to the priest and said, this guy's a jerk. I'm not going to, he thinks he's God. He thinks he's going to decide if he can give them communion or not. And my priest said, just go through the training, ignore what he says, and then, you can do what you think is right. So, training, it's like all hypocrisy as far as I'm concerned. Then I get to ask my other stuff later?
Yeah, let's just move on to some questions we had scheduled. The Catholic priest isn't here. He had a funeral this morning, and unfortunately he let us know a little bit late. Pastor Thomas, I went to an event you had on human trafficking that was just amazing. They had a survivor, and you could talk more about it, that came and spoke. She was a 45-year-old woman who had been trafficked during her teen years, and the outreach that they're doing, if you could share that, please.
Thank you. Allow me just for a moment to say this. We started out with statements, glowing statements about tolerance and how that we should all work together and adhere to our convictions and so on, and we've just taken a little bit of a turn very quickly. We've retreated again behind our particular identities, hoping to gain perhaps emotional support and other support because of our identities. We've bashed Catholics. We have said that a patriarchal society will be replaced by a matriarchal society. I'm not sure that we've made any gains in that. You could ask my 3 daughters, 3 sisters, and my wife. I assure you that they would not see me as a religious man and a man who adheres to the Word of God as being patriarchal. Once again, I return to this, and it's the reason why we believe in rescuing victims. It's the reason why we would be against abuse in any form whatsoever, coming from any human being to another human being. We did have, as Dr. Scleri has alluded to, we had a conference back in November. As I had said earlier, I came into contact with a missionary who had come from India. He had worked with rescuing human trafficking victims, primarily young girls in India. There, young girls will typically cut their face with a knife so that they would not be considered to be brought in at the age of 7 or 8 to please the will of could be any number of men. And so what he saw was that the United States was just as guilty as India and that he needed to come home. We are supporting his ministry. It's called Free International. He has headquarters in Long Branch, New Jersey, and also Las Vegas, which is the 10th highest human trafficking practicing city in the world at this point. And so he's opening up a home. We're also working with Teresa Flores, as Dr. Scleri was at that conference. She had been a victim, was trapped, was tricked into prostitution while she was in high school. She has written a marvelous book, and she tells the story. And she is heading up and has started resident programs in Ohio, and so we're supporting her and Free International financially. We also are now working towards, there's another ministry in Lancaster County, a young lady that we knew. She grew up in the church they had pastored there in Pennsylvania, and she has started a resident home. So our goal is to send out interns to work with these programs and also to rescue young ladies, especially off the streets. It's probably best, it's not optimum that they stay in the same town where that they have been trafficked. A lot of times their lives are in danger, and so we will send them out. We're also going to be hosting on May the 21st a human trafficking community awareness conference at our church, and these are just some of the ways that we hope to meet and to confront and counteract this blight that's upon our nation right now. Thank you.
I'd just like to say one thing. I'm not going to let him just sit there and say that, I am bashing anything when I tell you what happened to me and what my experience has
Oh, I don't
been.
question that. I don't question that. It was just that the Catholic priest had a funeral, and
I didn't know that at the time. But I would have said the same thing to his face. And anyone who knows me
you're right
knows
to do
that.
that.
Dr. Quatanani, I just wanted to ask you, how do the men react when you go out and speak about what the Quran is saying about respecting the women? What is the reaction that you're getting from the men?
The reaction of the men in this case, as I saw, that it is excellent. That because maybe in, I don't know about other religions, but in Islam, there is a great respect from people to the Quran and the Sunnah in general. So when you say that Allah says, no one discuss it. And everything is very clear in the Quran and Sunnah. So if you say domestic violence is against Allah's laws, everybody has to say, I have to listen and I have to obey. No one can say no. And what did we see about domestic violence? Most of people who had domestic violence, most of them, I don't say 100%, no, most of them are not religious, and most of them because of drinking liquors and drugs. Rarely to have some person who is practicing religion in good way, with good understanding, with wisdom, to have bad relationship with his wives. And secondly, there is, until this moment, I didn't find any person to say it is allowed to be violent with your wife. No one can say that. So this is very clear in the Quran and Sunnah. And I wrote a very important book for my community. It is translated also in English. It is about the relationship between man and woman and the wife and the husband and the family. And thanks to God that maybe thousands of copies were read by the community in United States in general.
Okay, I have a question from a student for Sue Bedell. In the results of Tyler Clementi's death, how do you feel about Rutgers' potential dorm policy change that will allow male and females to opt in to dorm with the opposite sex in the same room?
I just heard about that, and it seemed, I don't understand why, because of his death, they're now allowing opposite sex students to live in the same room, right? That's what that was the outcome of it, right? Can you read the question again?
Let me read the question again.
Okay. Oh, right, sorry.
The question was written in by a student.
Right.
Okay. In result of Tyler Clementi's death, how do you feel about Rutgers' potential dorm policy change that would allow male and females to opt in to dorm with the opposite sex in the same room?
Right. Well, when I first heard it, I was like, how is this helping the gay community? And then I realized it was just another way, as far as I could see, to let same-sex people live together. Because what they were saying was, Because this poor fella, right, Tyler Clementi, killed himself. Everybody in Rutgers is now so afraid that they're going to live with a gay person that they have to be allowed to live with a man has to be allowed to live with a woman just to make sure they're not going to live with the gay person. I mean, is that what they're saying? It didn't make much sense to me. So if anybody can enlighten me as to how else to read it, please let me know.
We have another question for the panel from the students. How do your religions deal with extremists? And he gave, or she gave examples, he or she gave examples of God hates fag campaigns or honor killings, preaching hatred against race, other religions. Have any of you had extremists in your organizations?
You're directing that question to the students?
To really anybody. This is a pretty open question.
Yes, in general, in Islam, extremism is unacceptable and forbidden. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, be aware of extremism. You have to be moderate and to be balanced. So, treating women or wives or anybody in the community or even others in violent way is unacceptable, and you will find not only one verse, maybe hundreds of verses talking about this issue. So Islam in general is with balanced rulings, balanced relationship, and being nice and kind and merciful to everyone around you, especially your family. If you have no goodness with your family, I think you have no goodness with anyone in the world.
Can I just ask a second to that question? I mean, where your congregation is, I could see where you could practice that and it would be followed. But how do you explain the countries around the world where they have, what is it, the law that says that you can, if your wife has, if a man rapes a woman, she gets stoned to death?
Raping in Islam is a crime from any side in the community, from male or female. So raping is forbidden 100%. No one can say it is acceptable. Second, to have any killing because of sexual relationship is also not done in Islam except by the court. Any relationship which is out of the family or out of the marriage relationship, it has to go to the court, and the court has to decide is it real or not. Even in Islam, if a woman or a man has an adultery, you have to bring four witnesses against that. 4 witnesses. So if you don't have 4 witnesses, you will not be punished. The opposite will be happen. The one who is witness will be punished. So you have to bring 4 witnesses that woman or that man committed zina or adultery or thing. In Islam, adultery is forbidden. Any sexual relationship beyond the marriage life is unacceptable, because Islam wants to strengthen the family relationship. Islam wants to build the family on chastity and honesty, and this is in Christianity and Judaism, all the religions.
Right, I agree, but what about the recent case in Iran where they were going to stone the woman?
Absolutely. In Islam, there is disagreement between scholars about the stoning. It is a ruling which most of scholars now saying it is not acceptable, and they said it is narrated in the Torah, and it was taken at the beginning from the Torah. But after that, if you go to the Quran, you will not find the stoning in the Quran. You will find in the Quran the other punishments, not stoning. So in the Quran, there is no any verse talking about stoning.
I'd like to say a couple of things. First of all, back in the 70s, everybody said, yeah, you ought to smack your wife. It's good, you know, she deserves it. Like the movie Kevin showed at my class with Andy Griffith. You know, everybody said, that's fine, you can beat up your wife, that's cool. And now people have learned how to use the system. They say it's bad, and they say that you shouldn't do it, but they still do it because they are misogynist, but they've learned to hide it. The other thing I'd like to mention is there was a film that I had. It was about a woman, Amina Lawal, who was stoned. And there was this very well-educated anthropologist. He was a Muslim anthropologist. And he said that the Quran teaches to love women and respect women. But people that are misogynists reinterpret it to justify what they want to do. So the Bibles, I believe, the Quran, all the other holy books, teach treating women with respect, honoring women, because that's what's going to make the world the way we want it to be. But misogynists turn it around and they use it to justify their hateful, misogynist, violent behavior.
Thank you. Can I say something? Only one moment. Even about a stoning, for those who said that stoning is a ruling for adultery, even with this, it is not against women. It is against men or women. So if a man also committed adultery, he will face the same thing, the stoning. So that means that we want not any kind of khiyana. What does it mean? To be far away from honesty and sincerity in the family. We want wife committed to the husband, husband committed to the family. So this is the only side which is mentioned in some traditions, not in the Quran.
To address the question, every religious group has extremists within it, and certainly Judaism is no exception. What we try to do is to respond appropriately when the extremists speak out. So to give a recent example, there was a group of extremist rabbis in Israel this last year who put forth a teaching that the Jews in their communities shouldn't sell homes or apartments to Arabs lest they dilute the Jewishness of their neighborhoods. And they told the women that they shouldn't put themselves in workplaces or vocational places where they would interact with non-Jews. And it received a rousing condemnation from rabbis both inside of Israel and outside of Israel, because the things that they were teaching are not what mainstream Judaism believes or teaches or preaches. And so we weren't willing to let their statements remain on the books as a public face for Judaism. But within every group, you're going to find the extremists and you're going to find the moderates. What's important is for the moderates to speak out against the things that the extremists are saying.
I would like to add, in the Buddhist tradition, we view extremism as a really type of suffering, that someone is looking outside of themselves and blaming other people or other groups for their own unhappiness. And Buddhism for us is really an internal journey, that happiness comes from within. It's not about blaming your environment or anyone else. So it's really about self-reflection. We believe in the middle way, that there is no difference among any of us. We're all interconnected. We all have Buddha nature. So we do not advocate any kind of extremism, because it's really separating yourself from all others.
We have quite a few questions coming in. Would anybody like to just ask the question? Because some of them are getting a little repetitive. Yes?
We might have to stand so we can hear, man. Stand up.
Yeah, How do we empower the victims of domestic violence? Because in most of the cases, we find out that financial, education, and there are a lot like various barriers that help perpetuate the
What she's
cycle.
asking is, how do we empower the victims, the domestic violence victims, to leave? I'm just going to add really quickly that every county has, Passaic County of the Women's, Passaic County,
Both shelters, women's centers.
the Passaic County Women's Center. Every county has something. Middlesex County, for instance, has Women Aware. But if they're going to go to the religious leaders, let's just go down the line really quickly. What can you do, because we're running out of time, to empower a woman to leave? We'll just go right down.
But how do you make them feel better about their decisions in terms of their God?
After leaving, because you go to the shelter and everything, but there's a ward outside that you have to come back to the ward. How do you empower the woman? to
Okay,
be
when you
independent?
go to the shelter, the counties do offer work training programs. There's the crime victims where you can get a compensation up to $25,000. So, medical care, things like that for your children. But let's just take it to our different religious leaders. So the women are empowered to leave. So when they come to you, as they're getting the strength, and we're going to say that the county's already taking care of the financial and the education.
Certainly, we would make referrals to agencies that are helping in that way, but we also have a counseling center. There are 13 counselors who are available to help in cases like this or other situations, to counsel people through, to support them through that. My personal conviction is that any individual having faced, whether it's abuse or brokenness, disappointment, disillusionment in life, I believe through a personal relationship with God, through Jesus Christ. That's my conviction, that they can be strengthened in the inner man, and that we can conquer through the grace of God any of these situations. But God uses people, and that's why we will endeavor with everything that we can to surround them, to embrace them, to help them through.
Essentially, from a Buddhist perspective, we would certainly encourage her to chant, to change this life condition, to change her karma, to awaken to her mission. But we also have members in the Buddhist community who are social workers, psychologists, and we would engage them and ask them to talk to her and help her and give her suggestions about how to go forward.
Let's stop right there, because I just want to come back over here. I just want to stop right there because I think it's sounding abstract to you, but from my personal experience, I am personally a Christian, and so I understand what Pastor Thomas is saying, but while I was practicing my Christian relationship, I spent 2 years here with Carolyn overcoming my own domestic violence situation, and what she's saying is, and this was taking two of these organizations together, because, and it's in the film with Tina Turner, it's taking back your power. So, because I know you're looking at them and it's looking abstract to you, but it really does work. And so I've actually used both of them personally, and it does. You're taking it back. So whether you're doing it through the light of Christ and you're doing it through, and the worst step to take is, well, how did I get here? Which Carolyn's referenced a few times, and I've personally done that with Carolyn. So what she's saying, it works, and what Pastor Thomas is, I'm just saying from my own experience, and so as we go down the road, what they're saying is not as abstract as it may sound to you now, but what each one is going to say from here on, really through their faith, does work. So, can we continue?
The same that according to the teachings of God, that we have to stand beside who is a victim. It is an obligation on everybody, and we have to help him as much as we can. First, if he needs financial support, we have to. If he needs or she needs, if she needs shelter, we have to. It is an obligation. If she needs to be helped through education or something. But after that, which is very important, after this side, that we have to give her some kind of relying and depending and believing in God. Believing in God and trusting in Him is the most important way of strengthening the victim. That you have to be strong with believing in God. And God said in the Quran, seek help through prayers and patience. When you are a victim, sometimes not you are a victim because of your husband or your wife or spouse. Sometimes you are a victim because of the state. Sometimes you are a victim because of your neighbor. Sometimes you are a victim because of your father or mother. So you have to be strong. And there is no way of being strong without relying and believing in God. Because He is with you and He will give you victory sooner or later. And you have to understand this because God is there. God is with you and He will never put you down or leave you alone, especially when you need Him. So when you need Him, stand before Him and ask Him for help. Seek help from Him and He will be with you. Thank you.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to email these to all our panel, and then on our new Facebook page, we'll post the answers. Because there's so many questions coming in. I want to give Melissa and Max an opportunity to speak on the day's events.
Oh, about our direct question.
Yeah, and on the day's events.
Okay. Well, would you like me to speak?
You can go.
Well, hi again. My name is Max Sainville. I'm representing WPU InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, and what I really wanted to do, I was asked to tell you all why or what I see in the student community as the most important issue that we should address. And I feel the most important issue that needs to be addressed in the student community, especially here at William Patterson University, is non-engagement. In other words, I feel most students are not taking or don't feel the need to take action in issues like human trafficking and slavery and women's rights issues, human rights issues. And I can understand the whole, idea that we're in college and we're just here to go to school and get our degrees, but I feel that it's an injustice at the same time because of just how high the issue is, how huge the issue is in the world. I feel as if because it's not a lot of times because something isn't happening to you or to somebody you love, a lot of students don't care and don't want to engage. So that's one of the things that my club, our chapter on campus seeks to do. That's one of the things we pursue is the whole idea of changed lives, changed campus, and a changed world. So we believe. I ask questions like, what would it look like if the university, if the campus, really formed alliances or organizations and groups that were, on the front lines of the fight against human trafficking and some of the issues in the world. Yes, it's true that many students they're taking a stand for change in regards to education costs, but for things such as human trafficking and modern day slavery, where 80% of the victims are women and girls, and 50% of the perpetrators are men. I feel like we ought to do something. I want to encourage all the students who are here. I know some of you may have to go to class at 2 o'clock. I want to encourage you to do something because I can testify. I'm a witness that you can be in college and do something about the issues going on, and I can say that it's because of my faith in Jesus that I've been motivated to do this because God loves justice and God has a heart for the least of these and for people who are oppressed. And so that compels me to do something, and I feel like it ought to compel other people who are part of different faith groups to do something about these issues. So I just wanted to say, we're doing something. I'm doing something. The Christian Fellowship Club on campus is doing something. We held our first Human Wrong campaign on campus last semester where we raised awareness about human trafficking, and we, gave students practical things to do about it. We try to equip the campus and empower the campus to do something about it. And I'm just excited about what God is doing in the earth, about, you know, in regards to like issues like these. I feel like God is really empowering people and giving people a passion to act, not just to continue learning about these things, but to act. So I'm excited about that. I feel like love is on the move, and I'm a part of that move. So that's what I wanted to share with you all today. Thank you.
I just want to talk about prevention and education. I feel like not enough young women are aware of the red flags to go up for domestic violence relationships. They live in their own little bubble and they're like, no, it can't happen to me. He says he loves me. But love should not hurt, like the national campaign. Many people know this, but in high school, I was in a verbally abusive relationship. I was like, no, he says he loves me so much. But I didn't see the red flags, and I feel if more women are empowered to see it and know that they can prevent from being in a relationship like I was. Actually, it kind of sounded like the Mel Gibson tapes that came out earlier this year, our conversations. Like, it's funny now to think about it, but looking back, just, no. And through Judaism and learning and teshuvah, repentance, and chesed, loving kindness, I've learned that in all our marriage laws and all my learning, that a man is supposed to treat his wife better than he treats himself. It's pretty deep. Yes. And in the marriage contract, he is obligated to give her clothing, sheltering, and marital relations. And if a woman finds her husband unattractive to her, that's grounds for divorce. So learning all this, I really took to myself, like, that should not have happened to me in the past. I know what to look for. In fact, we have many books about Jewish way in love and marriage. Is a great resource. I have a dating book called Head to Heart, where in the back has a little chapter about all the red flags. And I feel if more women are exposed to this and know what the religion says, know what their laws say, and then not even just religion, but country and state, that it shouldn't happen anymore. And like, I know here on campus, Kelly is forming a divert team, which is very important. So they don't have to rely on the town or the police. They can come right here to campus if something's happened.
I just wanted to make a correction. I said 50% of the perpetrators are men. That is not right at all. I meant to say 50% of the 80% of human trafficking victims are minors. 80% are women and girls. I did not mean to say 50% of the people who commit the crimes are men, so I apologize about that. But thank you.
Well, I just want to thank our panel for coming today. It was wonderful they took the time out to share with us. And the students worked very hard. I want to thank Campus Activities. We had Kelly's group did a lot of work and designed the flyers, Nicole Stone, Women Parishes Students Against Violence. We had Christian Fellowship students help. We had Hillel. We were funded by the Student Government Association. And Michelle Murphy spent part of her weekend helping with the agenda. I want to thank the Women's Center and Women's and Gender Studies for supporting this and helping also. You can meet the panel, have some refreshments, all that type of thing.
As a closing question, you spoke about human trafficking. I know she has the Students Against Violence on campus, and there's Chosen for LGBTQ issues. But is there anything going on with human trafficking that's coming up, or things that like others just get involved in for the coming year, organizations?
Oh, sure. Actually, we're beginning our Human Wrong campaign this week. Actually, we're having our first event, which is a hunger banquet tonight at 6 p.m.
Next
correct?
door.
Right next door. So we invite you all to join that, because I'd like to say that's one of the things kind of broke my heart last year, because I did kind of try to partner up and invite other clubs and organizations to kind of help us with the campaign, but only like 1 or 2 clubs actually did, and I feel like that should change. You know what I mean? There should be a campus-wide movement of fighting against this issue. It's slavery. Slavery definitely still exists, and we ought to do something about it.
If I can also respond to the student, Women's and Gender Studies is in the process. It's just about finished developing a course on trafficking. because we feel this is so important that this needs to be, you know, something that is addressed in a course.
It's not really addressed on campus very much, other than.
Yes, yeah.
within this
So we're
department, I haven't
definitely
heard of it,
also
so.
focusing more on this issue.
Excuse me, I'm Terry Bogaret. I'm the Deputy Director of the Department of Public Safety, which is Campus Police. And so that you know we're involved in this, I want to give 2 comments. One is our detectives have a program called Healthy Sexual Relationships that we give in any course or for any group that's there. The other thing is we have anonymous reporting on our website so that if somebody knows something about a relationship and they want to report it, we will take care of it if it's given. And I shouldn't say 2 things. The third thing is to remember that if you are in a resident student and you have a roommate that is acting out and stuff, that qualifies as domestic violence. And that's the only points I want to make. Thank you.